What are you doing, girl? What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh my God, look at this. Look at all this hair. This is something you guys may not know about Holly. Can you see this? Can you see the hair? You can just pull clumps of hair off of this dog, one after another. Okay, go find a place to lay down. Welcome to HortTube. My name is John Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video where I answer gardening questions on Sundays. You can ask questions down below this video and I will draw from those, pick from those next week. I've answered a lot of gardening questions over the years on this channel, and there is a playlist for it. I'll link up here in the corner. If you're watching on YouTube, you can go back and watch some of those. I had a lot of comments on last week's video because we had a giveaway and I asked people to name their favorite local garden center. That was kind of fun to read through, kind of hard to hunt questions down. 800 and some comments or something or more. I can't remember how many there were. But it was great. Thank you all for participating. The winner for the snips is Stephen Campbell. If you will send me an email to this email address with your address, I will send those out to you. Thanks for everyone for participating in that. I've got another pair that I'm going to give away for this next week as well. You can comment down below with a gardening question or to be entered in the contest, or you can also name your favorite mail order horticulture company. Okay, I'm not going to do mail order plants, just mail order plants. This can be mail order plants, seeds, bulbs, furniture. I don't care what it is. Wherever you would order something through the mail that's for your garden, let me know down below, and that's how you'll be, that's another way to enter into the giveaway for the snips, which I didn't bring out here with me, but trust me, I have snips, and I will give them to you if I draw your name next week. Okay, I put up a lot of videos this past week, and I don't know if it's because it's so hot, and it is, at least in my area, it's really, really hot, near 100. And we had such a cool start to the summer, or kind of an up and down start to the summer, where it just wasn't bad. But the last few weeks have been really quite warm, and there's no break in it coming up. So I don't know if because it's so hot or because of back to school or whatever, videos just aren't being watched. But my videos that I put up this past week were all super positive. I did the 2 giveaways in the neighborhood, and I'm looking into some alternative giveaway things as well. So those videos will be coming up. I did the video with Pat McCracken. I don't know if you will have seen my bulb video at the point that you're watching this. I don't know if I'll have that edited and up yet. But very low views, but those of you who have watched them, I appreciate it. And they've been super, super positive. I thought it was a good week of videos. But anyway, let's get started with a few gardening questions from this past week. Somebody has a red bud and they've gotten a ton of rain and the leaves have dropped off of it. And here in August, you know, they're wondering if it's still alive. The only way to check if it's still alive is to go out and bend limbs and see if they're still, they'll snap if they're dead. But if they're still very, very pliable, and red buds are super, super pliable, you should be able to move them around freely. That's one indication that it's still alive. You can also scratch the bark with your thumb, just in a small spot, and see if it's green right underneath the bark. If it is, maybe it's still alive. If you've gotten a ton of rain and it defoliated, my guess is that you've got root rot, and that's probably not a good sign. Unfortunately, that's not the answer that you want to hear, but it's probably not a good sign. But you can, again, I would not pull it up. I would give it time and see what it does, regardless of what's going on with it. But I lean toward probably not good news. Okay, somebody asked if we had the spotted lanternfly in North Carolina yet. There have been a few dead adults found in the state, but as far as anybody knows so far, no, they're coming here. You know, the quarantine area is up there in the Northeast. I'm actually heading up to Delaware and Pennsylvania. I'm going to Longwood this next week, not to do video work, just for work, different type of work. That's where the quarantine area is up there, but it's going to spread. We're definitely in the area where the spotted lanternfly is going to end up. Sometimes these quarantines are almost frustrating to me because we had the fire ant quarantine for years, where fire ants were in South Carolina, and then they were in a couple counties in North Carolina. And in order to ship out of the quarantine area, if you were in the quarantine area, you had to treat your pots with, you know, rather nasty chemicals. You know, you had to drench them with chemicals, and then people were loading the trucks with those pots, and then they were unloading them at the garden centers, wherever they were going to. To me, it was, for a futile effort. I mean, the daggone fire ants, guess what? They still continued to move north. There's nothing we could do about it. Seemed like a lot of wasted time, energy, and money, and a lot of chemical exposure to a lot of people for no reason. And so the same thing's going to happen with the lanternfly. I'm not saying we should just put them down here, but they're coming. And I don't know, we may slow it down, but ultimately they're going to go where they're going to go. And it's a sad thing. It's a beautiful insect. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's actually a beautiful insect. It does massive amount of damage. Somebody's got some dwarf fruit trees they planted in the spring. They're doing fantastic. They've got them 6 feet apart. They are dwarf fruit trees, and wanted to know if I think they have them too close together. That's on the edge of too close together. If you had full-size fruit trees, full-size apples, you'd probably want them 15, 18, maybe even 20 feet apart, something like that. Dwarf fruit trees, maybe 8 feet, 6 to 10 feet is probably the appropriate amount. So you've definitely got them on the narrower end of close together. I don't know that I'd do anything about it, though. If you've put them in the ground and they're doing well, then I wouldn't worry about it. Make sure you are find videos on fruit tree pruning. Make sure you're pruning them properly so that they get good air movement through, especially when you've crowded them together. It's going to be more important in the future to make sure you got air moving through them. Okay. Somebody asked me if it was okay to use cow manure with their clay soils. Yeah, I mean, composted cow manure is fine. I mean, it's just compost. I mean, we call it cow manure, but it's been composted, so it's just compost. But yeah, composted cow manure is fine. Again, I've talked about this many times. Don't go crazy with organic material in clay soils. You can end up keeping them far too wet. So a small amount of cow manure is perfectly fine to use. So you could use a shovelful with whatever you pulled out of the hole when you're planting the plant. A shovelful would be the appropriate amount. But we don't want 50, 60% organic material in that hole. Because again, it will stay too wet. And keep in mind, you're digging a clay pot. It just happens to be sitting in the ground. So all the walls of where you didn't dig are still solid clay. If you fill that thing up with organic material that has the capacity to wick up water, water's going to fall in the easiest place. Water goes in the ground the easiest place it can find. So it's going to go in the ground where you've dug that hole. If you put a lot of something in that hole that can wick up water, it's going to wick up tons of water, and it's going to stay too wet around the roots of your plant. So keep that in mind. A small amount of organic material goes a long way. I've got the hummingbird drama again. Hummingbirds all over the place this morning. Hopefully one will fly behind my head at some point. Okay, somebody asked me the best time to root roses, and any time while they're actively growing, really. Roses are actually very easy to root. So any time between, the 1st of May and now would be fine. Typically going into fall, we tend to see some growth on a second round of growth on our roses. It's kind of hot right now, so I don't know if we are or not. The rose garden actually looks great. The Raleigh rose garden, surprisingly, looks just absolutely fantastic here at the end of summer. I was over there the other day, and it's in full flower. But this would be the time you could take cuttings. Keep in mind, a lot of the roses that you're looking at are grafted roses, and they're grafted for a reason. They're grafted on a superior rootstock. So it's not always, you can root the roses pretty easily. It doesn't mean that they're going to be as vigorous as the parent plant if the parent plant is a grafted variety. You may want to look a little more into that. I don't know what varieties of roses you're trying to root. Also, anyway, there you go. Let me see. Somebody asked about the aphids. They've got aphids on their milkweed, and the aphids and the monarch caterpillars have shown up at the same time, and they wanted to know if there was anything that they could do about it. Not really at this point. I mean, you can go out there and try to hand remove some of them. Keep in mind, your aphids and caterpillars didn't arrive at the same time. The aphids actually arrived probably a month or more ago, and it took them some period of weeks to become that numerous that you're seeing them on the ends of every branch. And so sometime back in July, you might want to be scouting next year to find them early and reduce their numbers before they get completely out of control. I hope that makes sense. Just a little earlier scouting in the season before the caterpillars got there. And then again, if you don't have caterpillars on it, you can blast a lot of those things off with just a little jet of water. Not strong enough to hurt the plant, but enough to knock them off. I'll do that with whiteflies and aphids frequently. I see whiteflies or aphids, I'm going for the water hose before I'm going for a chemical, and see if I can just reduce their numbers by drowning them, knocking them off and drowning them. But that particular, that aphid, unfortunately, is super bad news because it's a foreign invader, of course, and it's the Oleander Aphid, the Oleander Aphid, which some people call milkweed aphid, but it's on all of our milkweed, and it does compete for nutrients in the milkweed in the late summer and fall when the monarch caterpillars are also trying to get those nutrients. I've got sun on my face right now, maybe. Sun is coming up here right beside that. Let's get a little closer. Okay, right there. That's worse. That's actually worse. Anyway, a little earlier scouting next year, and I think you can probably have them at least slightly more under control. It's nothing we can really do about it long term. Somebody wanted to know if Dragon Prince Kryptomaria would work well in Zone 8A in North Texas. And I don't know how much rainfall you get. I have a hard time. I think that Kryptomaria is one of the more heat-tolerant conifers. And so junipers and Kryptomaria lend themselves well to hotter areas. And so I think the heat, your winter in the heat's going to be totally fine. I don't know what kind of water you get, what kind of rainfall you get wherever you are there in Texas. It will need some ongoing watering. I always have a hard time figuring out what to recommend. You know, I've had some conversations, some of my consultation work will be with folks in, you know, West Texas and other places, and they want to use all these ornamentals that we use in the East. I always have a hard time with that. I mean, you know, it feels like you should be looking for plants maybe that are a little more drought tolerant. I don't know where this person lives. They may live in an area. East Texas, you know, does get some rainfall. But if you're in an area where you're getting less rainfall, maybe looking for things that aren't going to require, you know, if you turn your back on it, it's going to be dead, you know, in a desert climate. It's always hard for me in conversations because I don't want, being the realist that I am, you know, I think it's the right plant, right place. And if you're in New Mexico or Arizona and you're looking for plants that are going to require you to have to water them literally every day, you know, while the underground aquifers disappear under the city you live in, it's kind of hard for me to recommend that kind of stuff. It's you know, I really do think we need to find beauty in the areas that we live in and work around that. You know, I get 50 inches of rain a year. I have to irrigate some, but I don't have to irrigate anything like I would have to irrigate in, you know, the western part, in most of the western part of the country. And so I don't know. I'm always the plant's going to be fine for you. But I don't know, again, if you're in an area of Texas where you get some rainfall, great. If you're not, maybe you want find something a little more really drought tolerant. Okay, let's see. So I always get the question, this is that purple plant behind me is a Loropetalum, which I also want you guys to notice how dark that actually is. Purple plants and dark foliage plants, we tend to use, people want colorful foliage, but look how dark that actually is. That actually doesn't show up as well as you would think in a landscape. It needs, I've got that sunshine ligustrum, maybe you can see right there, that makes it pop just a little bit. I don't know if it's in the frame or not, but it actually is kind of dark in that spot, and certainly different times of the day. They're not quite as showy in the landscape as you think, dark foliage things. Anyway, I always get questions, people in zone 5 and 6 jealous of the Loropetalum because of the purple leaves and want to know some sort of substitute. And unfortunately, I don't think there is an evergreen substitute for Loropetalum in colder zones. I mean, I think barberries are probably the solution. The nice thing about barberries is we now have some that are not noxious weeds, you know, so the seed issue, you know, in breeding them, they're keeping them from being, you know, noxious weeds and spread everywhere. But also the colors are getting much better. So you might want to look into into barberries. Yes, they'll lose their leaves in the wintertime. This thing doesn't look particularly great in January either. It does have leaves, but it doesn't look particularly great. So I don't know that I've got a giant win over you. But I would look into newer barberry varieties that aren't noxious weeds. And again, super, super, super colorful ones. I had one called Luton Rouge that the Southern Living Plant Collection is releasing next year. It's a little dwarf one. Just amazing, amazing, amazing color on it. Really super bright. I think it's a year or so away from being released. But anyway, those are getting better. Let's see. Last question this week. Somebody has hydrangea macrophylla with spots on it. And that's Cercospora, which is pretty common on a lot of different plants. But hydrangea macrophylla, hydrangea paniculata, even hydrangea quercifolia, oak leaf hydrangeas are all very susceptible to it. You need to be cleaning the leaves up on the plants that have it. If you have one that's gotten particularly bad, it may be an older variety. That is one of the things in plant breeding for hydrangeas that is maybe they're looking for more than anything is Cercospora resistance, Cercospora leaf spot resistance. That is, you know, I was down there talking to Dr. Durr last year. Gosh, the years are weird now. Yeah, I think it was about this time last year. I was down filming Dr. Durr for an event, and that was part of the conversation, was that we're in kind of a little bit of a cul-de-sac with hydrangea macrophylla breeding, meaning that, you know, we're crossing Cercospora leaf spot varieties together, trying to have an outcome where we don't have Cercospora. So it's like it's kind of a losing battle right now. But again, that is the thing they're looking for in that breeding is resistance. So if you have one that's really, really bad, it might be an older variety that you would think about getting rid of. If it's a newer one you planted, this is something you're probably going to have most years, especially in humid areas. And the main thing is getting the leaves off the ground that drop off of it, cleaning them up well in the fall. Send those leaves off your property and don't reuse them. Keep it clean around it. You're still going to have it, but you can keep it from getting completely out of control. But again, replace it if it's an old variety and it just looks terrible every summer, or replace it with something completely different other than a hydrangea. So great questions from this week, and again, down below to be entered in the giveaway, name your favorite mail order company for horticulture or outdoor living. That is totally fine. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Got some hopefully interesting content coming out this next week. Thanks for watching.